Sirui has just released a brand new set of full-frame anamorphic cinema lenses. They're lightweight, compact, and feature a user-interchangeable mounting system. And priced at just $999 each, they are a compelling option for filmmakers looking for that classic anamorphic look on a budget. But does affordability mean compromise? Well, let's take a closer look and find out. These are the Sirui IronStar anamorphic lenses. They are 1.5 squeeze anamorphic cine lenses with a 46mm image circle that covers full frame and large format sensors. I'm really glad to see that Sirui went with a 1.5x squeeze for this new series of anamorphic lenses, because I think that 1.5x squeeze gives you a perfect balance between a nice anamorphic look and still being able to use it on 16:9 sensors. Currently there are 3 focal lengths available, a 35mm, 45mm, and 60mm. They all have a fast aperture of t1.9 that goes up to t16. Sirui has mentioned that the IronStar series will finally consist of 8 focal lengths, so I'm pretty excited to see when those other ones are going to be released. The ones I have here are the blue flare version, and Sirui also offers a neutral flare version. These 3 focal lengths are similar in size and they all weigh around 1 kilogram. This makes them pretty lightweight and small compared to other full-frame anamorphic lenses. Sirui has placed the anamorphic element in the middle of the lens, which gives you a good balance between keeping the lens smaller and lighter, but should still offer nice anamorphic characteristics. They have their focus and aperture gears on the same position throughout the focal range, which is always great to see. The focus ring turns nice and smooth on all 3 lenses, and they all have a focus throw of 270 degrees, which is great for dialing in correct focus. I like that the IronStars have both imperial and metric markings on the lens. However, I would have loved to see the focus markings on both sides of the lens. The aperture ring is a bit stiffer than the focus ring, but still turns without any issues. The lenses do have aperture markings on both sides of the lens. All 3 of them have a 92mm filter thread and a 95mm outer front diameter for clamping on matte boxes. Another clever touch from Sirui is the small built-in support base on these lenses, which makes it easy to add extra stability when mounting to a camera rig. Now, as I mentioned earlier, these lenses are pretty lightweight, so using it isn't strictly necessary, but it's a nice option to have if you want a bit of added support. The Sirui IronStar lenses come with a native PL mount, and I personally think it's great that Sirui went this route. PL mount is really easy to adapt to pretty much any other mount out there, so it's a really versatile mounting system. The kit does come with EF mounts as well, and these are user interchangeable. So if you are using an EF camera or you prefer to adapt from EF to your system, it's really easy to swap these mounts. You simply unscrew these 4 screws on the back of the lens. Then you can remove the PL mount, now grab the EF mount and make sure you line it up correctly with this little pin you can see right here. Screw in the 4 screws again and finally reattach the back focus cover ring. So Sirui always seems to come up with new things to make their lenses more user-friendly, and with these IronStars, they've come up with a unique back focus system. Like you've seen before, you can remove this cover ring on the back here, and that then reveals a back focus ring. So instead of having to disassemble the mount and adding shims, you can loosen this little screw here, and then you can simply turn this back focus ring when exchanging the mount, which is a pretty cool feature and I've honestly never seen before. One thing that was a little bit strange, and I'm unsure if this is just an issue with the lenses I have here, but I was unable to lock the lens to my PL adapter with this cover ring attached. Once I removed the cover ring from the lens, it locked into place with no issues. And I tried this on 2 adapters, my Mofage Poco adapter, as well as a Latretter adapter. Alright, now let's have a look at the image quality these lenses produce. We'll go over a few tests and also look at some real-world test footage I shot with these lenses. When it comes to sharpness, these lenses perform pretty well and kind of what you would expect from these types of anamorphic lenses. Starting off with the 35mm at t1.9, this lens is pretty sharp in the center. If you look at the corners, it's definitely losing sharpness and is very soft at the extreme corners. At T2.2, the center sharpness improves and also the sharpness at the corners becomes a little bit better. T2.8 is again slightly sharper in both the center as well as the corners, and then from T4 and up we can see a pretty big improvement in sharpness in the corners. The 40mm starts off similarly with reasonable sharpness in the center. The corners are also quite soft here, wide open. As we close down the aperture, sharpness does improve in the center and the corners. And also with the 40mm, it seems like the sweet spot for overall sharpness is at T4. Here we can see the center is nice and sharp as well as the corners. Looking at the 60mm at T1.9, the center is again reasonably sharp, but the corners are very soft with the lens wide open. And they remain pretty soft again up until T4 and up. So very similar sharpness performance on all three of these lenses. Now, one thing to note here is that softness in the corners is very typical for anamorphic lenses, and it's actually something that some people might specifically be after with lenses like this. When it comes to color consistency, this set of lenses performs really well. I couldn't see any color shift between the three focal lengths on this test, so a really good result for budget cine lenses. I also didn't see any noticeable vignetting on either of these focal lengths, so in this regard they have a more clean look to them compared to other anamorphic lenses, and you're not going to get any strong vignette from these lenses. Another common feature on anamorphic lenses is distortion, and these lenses are no different. The 35mm shows a noticeable amount of barrel distortion, but what really stands out is the strong pincushion distortion. This is something that's fairly common with more budget-friendly anamorphic lenses. The 45mm follows a similar pattern with moderate barrel distortion and pronounced pincushioning. On the 60mm, the barrel distortion is much less apparent, but the pincushion distortion remains quite prominent. Now again, this type of distortion on anamorphic lenses is neither good or bad. It's kind of a feature that you get with anamorphic, and whether you like it or not is entirely up to you. Some people prefer more barrel distortion, where others like strong pincushion distortion. Or maybe you don't like any distortion, but then it's probably best not to look at budget anamorphic lenses in the first place. Alright, moving on to focus breeding, all of these lenses suffer from pretty significant focus breeding. The 35mm is probably the best of the three, but it's still definitely very noticeable. The 45mm has pretty strong focus breeding to where it almost seems like you're zooming into the image. Same thing goes for the 60mm with very strong focus breeding on this lens. All these lenses have 16 aperture blades, and overall this produces smooth bokeh balls. There is some cat eye bokeh towards the edges on the 35mm, and this lens does have slightly less smooth bokeh balls with almost a hexagon shape to them. This is something I didn't notice on the 45mm and the 60mm. Both of these lenses have very nice and clean bokeh balls. Here you'll also see a more cat eye shaped bokeh towards the edges of the frame. Overall, when looking at some of the test footage I shot with these lenses, the focus roll-off is nice and smooth. You're getting a smooth looking image from these lenses with typical anamorphic features, but nothing is over the top. The 1.5x squeeze factor combined with the distortion and the nice blurry background at T1.9 give you a unique and more cinematic look. Like I mentioned before, the lenses I have here are the blue flare version, and Sirui does offer a neutral flare version as well. So we're getting a classic anamorphic blue horizontal flare with these lenses. Although I will say that the horizontal flare is pretty well controlled on the IronStars. Sometimes with cheaper anamorphic lenses, they kind of overdo it with the flare and it can get way too strong or saturated. The only thing I personally didn't like so much was this additional lens flare I was getting on the 60mm. It felt a bit too distracting, almost overpowering the classic anamorphic flare, which takes away from the overall look. When it comes to chromatic aberration, there is a noticeable amount of lateral chromatic aberration from T1.9 to about T4, and it cleans up after that on all three of these lenses. The longitudinal chromatic aberration, or LOCA, is very well controlled on the 35mm. On the 45mm, you are starting to see it a bit more in these tests. And on the 60mm, the LOCA does get a little bit stronger. But overall, I didn't find the chromatic aberration disturbing or very noticeable in any of my real-world test footage, and again, this might even be a feature for some people looking at anamorphic lenses like this. Alright, looking at the prices of these lenses, Sirui is offering a super early bird price of $999 per lens, or $2,999 for the set with a flight case on Kickstarter. After that, they will go for $1,199 per lens, or $3,599 for the set with the flight case. So these are definitely more in the budget range when it comes to full-frame anamorphic lenses with a 1.5x squeeze factor. If we're looking at a few alternatives, we've got the Blazar Remus, which are similarly priced, and here you've got a full set of T2.0 lenses with either a blue, amber, or silver flare. They're also a bit lighter, ranging from 720 grams to 811 grams. Another option could be the Laowa Nanomorph 1.5x Anamorphics. This set also comes in blue, amber, or silver flares, but they are, however, only T2.9. They're also around 1 kilogram in weight, but cost a bit more than the Sirui or the Blazars. Now, I have to admit, I am a little bit torn on these lenses. I was going into this expecting to really love them, and I was genuinely excited when they were first announced a little while back. But there are a few issues with these IronStars that have held me back from fully appreciating them. The most noticeable drawback is the strong focus breathing, which can be pretty distracting. And although the back focus system is a very cool idea, it's weird that the lens didn't fit my adapter with this cover ring attached. Now, with all that aside though, the image coming out of these IronStars does look really pleasing. You're getting that classic anamorphic aesthetic without it feeling too exaggerated or artificial. So I'm definitely curious to see how Sirui continues to evolve this lineup, and I really hope that they address some of these early quirks in future versions. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you have any questions, drop them down in the comments and I'll do my best to answer all of them. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!